count. So some of this might be repetitious. There's only 17 slides on this presentation, so we should be done really somewhat early. Okay. So the checkout is part of that departure phase of the guest cycle. Okay, what's the first stage of the guest cycle? Pre-arrival. What's the second stage? Arrival, good. And the third stage? Occupancy. And then departure. This marker is awful. Okay, pre-arrival, arrival, occupancy, and then departure. And so in this process, this is where the guest is actually coming to the front desk to check out of the hotel, okay? We want to figure out if there is any kind of outstanding balances. That's one of the first things we want to do is see if there's any outstanding balances, okay? We're going to verify their method of payment. Do we still want to keep this on the Visa card, okay? Or do you want to choose a different form of payment? This is like where, they might put a credit card as a form of authorization, but then they're going to pay with cash, or they're going to pay with a debit card. So that way, if they authorize the debit card, it's going to put those funds on hold twice. So they can authorize with a credit card, and they can still pay with their debit card if they want to, okay? Also in this process, we're then going to update our room status. So previously the room has been occupied, and now it's going to be not quite vacant. Well, vacant ready is usually what we'll say once the room is ready to go. It can either be checked out, or it can be on change, which means that it's in the process of being cleaned. What else? What did you say? Dirty. Okay. Yep. So it depends on your property management system and what that coding is. You just need to make sure that you're aware of what that coding is. And the big thing is you need to change that room status. If you are a hotel that's fully automated, and now that they're going with technology where they have actual iPads or they have tablets that will update the room status immediately with the housekeepers, you want to make sure you change that room status so they know that they can actually go in and clean that room. If you don't, then that housekeeper is going to be waiting around to go into that room, or they're going to assume that person is still in the room, and they're not going to actually go in there to try to clean the room, even though the room is already vacated, okay? Then the last thing is it's going to create all that information. It's going to go into the guest record, the guest history file. So we keep history on the guests, whether it's a group. Our sales office is going to keep a group history, but we also keep history on our guests. Why do we keep a history file on our guests? Hey, what's that? Okay, so in case they come back, we can have some kind of information about that guest. What else? Good. So if something went wrong during their stay, we can have a documentation of that in their history file. So then, again, if they do come back, we can make sure we're paying special attention to that particular guest, okay? Or we want to really thank them for coming back if they had experienced an issue and they're coming back to our hotel. Okay, what else? Good, so that if that guest has any kind of special needs or a request, then that's already in their file, that's already in our system. Okay? Anything else? Yeah, so we can identify if they are a rewards member. That goes into their account, and so their account history. That might be a whole other type of history, account history, that goes into their account for their profile for their rewards, if like their Hilton Honors or a Marriott Bonvoy or whatever, that can go into their actual account history for that. So we can see how many times we're getting people that are rewards members, unless it's a third party, of course, because we don't get things for a third party. We can also use that though, that history. We can see what is the percentage of third party to guests that are booking directly. And if we see that we're having a high percentage of guests that are booking third party, we can use that maybe in our marketing strategies to try to get people to book direct, okay? So we can use this information for our marketing as well. If we are in, let's say we're at a airport hotel and the majority of our guests are business travelers. Let's say we have 80% business travel and only 20% leisure travelers, okay? And it comes time for us to do renovations. We can actually identify how many times our guests go to the swimming pool or how many times our guests use our fitness center. And so if there's a larger percentage of our guests that are using the fitness center than the actual pool, when it comes to actually spending money on renovations, we might say we only have this amount of budget. So we could spend more money on upgrading our equipment, or we can spend this money on upgrading our pool. We can also look back and see it on our comment cards. People don't use our pool because it's outdated. Well, maybe I need to actually take that money. People are using the fitness center because the equipment is good, and they're not using the pool because the equipment is outdated. And so we're going to use all of that information, the comment cards, the surveys, with the guest history. Every time someone uses their key card to access something, we can identify how many times how popular that thing is. Okay, so there's lots of different ways for marketing that we can actually use this guest history. The first thing we want to do is we want to inquire about any additional or recent charges. Why do we want to do that first? So it avoids our late charges, okay? So Greg says we want to ask about their experience. So let's say that's number 2, okay? What would be number 3? What do you think? Okay, so we've already inquired about any recent charges. Everything's good to go. So now maybe you're going to present the folio to the guest. Okay. What else? What do you think number 4? Okay, so we might, where is that? In the middle. We might verify, do you want to keep this on the visa that we have on file? They say yes, okay, great. If they say no, how else would you like to pay for this, okay? Anything else? Oops, I think we made a mistake. Hold on. Before we do that, we might, well, we definitely want to verify the account information. We could do that, but we also want to post any outstanding charges. So after we've looked at the additional recent charges, somebody says, yes, I just came from breakfast. I'm not seeing that here. I want to post that to their account, yes, okay? So then present their folio, verify method of payment, want to make sure that they're verifying all the account information, their names, their address, all that. Is the email address okay? We can do that by saying, how would you like us to, can we send you our survey digitally through your email? Which email is good for you? We can verify that account information that way, okay? So we might, as they are doing that, then ask them to complete that satisfaction survey. It's very important for us to get that survey. Now, here's my thing with surveys. How many of you ever had this, like, if somebody says, if you really liked us, make sure you rate us 9 or above, okay? Because for us, on our surveys, the Medallia surveys, and whatever surveys you're using, typically, anything that only counts as a 9 or above. Sometimes it's 8, 9, or 10. If it's a 7, it doesn't count towards your scores. It only counts as an 8, 9, or 10. So I actually had, I've done a survey, I think, for Kentucky Fried Chicken one time, and one of the questions in the survey was, did somebody ask you to rate them exemplary or excellent, right? And so that's part of the survey. And of course, the person did, and I still said no because I understand how the process goes. But the average guest may not understand that. And so that could also hit against your scores if you're asking people to rate you as excellent. So you have to be careful with that. But we also want to make sure that this is as we are inquiring about their experience at the hotel, that's our last opportunity to make things right. So that when they do fill out that guest survey, they do feel satisfied, okay? So then what's next? Okay, so we might process the payment. Why is it important to secure the room key card? So they can't go back in the room. Okay, so if they're checking out at 8 o'clock in the morning, technically the computer has that scheduled till 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whatever our checkout time is. And so we want to secure that key card so that it doesn't fall into somebody else's hands or that guest doesn't have access back into the room. Okay, so in your systems it does? Okay.
I was just going to say, I was just thinking that's a form of doing business. So you're settling up and one thing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But for security reasons, I had an instance once where I was using the digital key, and I forgot something in my refrigerator up in the room. And so I stopped by the front desk. I had surrendered my keys, and I stopped by the front desk. I was like, oh, can I get a key real quick to run back up to my room to get the stuff out of the fridge? And she said, oh, yeah, I saw you using the digital key. She's like, oh, that still works until noon. And I was like, you probably shouldn't tell people that their digital key stays active past when they check out, because the computer, the reservation is set to end when the guest is supposed to check out. The same thing happens too, like if you request a late checkout. Someone requests a late checkout, they have to get a key that's reprogrammed for that, so that they can actually still access their room.
What about for the guests who always check out on the phone?
Yeah.
Check out and then you don't necessarily stop by the front desk on the way out.
Sorry, your bag.
No, I do my purse. I always come back with some keys.
That's okay.
Okay.
I mean, ideally you would leave it in the room. I've seen in some elevators where they have a key box that you can drop your keys in. I also have seen it in the hotel lobby where you just have a drop box that you don't have to stop at the front desk to do it. You can just walk in and just drop your keys in there. So that might be just like an extra reminder for somebody to do that. But now, especially if you're checking out with your phone, that's also communicating with your property management system, okay? And the last thing we want to do is update the room status. Now, it could be different for your hotel, but the key thing is that all of these points are hit so that you make sure that everything is consistent, everything is covered. Basically, how we settle our accounts, we talked about these, our cash or debit cards, our credit cards. Direct billing is one that we have not talked about in a lot of detail. What is direct billing? We have a house account, so we have a negotiation with a specific company. You can't just say charge to this account, okay? That account has to be negotiated usually through the sales office or through the management team. And then once that is, and that person has to have privileges to charge to that account, okay? And that's direct billing. So that goes into our city ledger, where then we can then process all of those payments all at once with that company, send them an invoice. And then what's combined settlement method? Basically any one of these three. It can be direct bill for the room and tax, and then it can be credit card or cash or debit card with the incidentals. The fastest one is cash. We know we're going to have our account is settled and done. If we use credit cards, then we have to bill the payment card company as an account payable, or sorry, as an account receivable. And so it's going to be a while before we get that money from the credit card company. So cash is the fastest way to settle an account, and we get our money right then and there. Okay. Late checkout. What is late checkout? Two, what do you think late checkout is? Okay, so it's past our normal checkout time. Let's say our checkout time is 11 o'clock, right? But they're still in the room after 11 o'clock, okay? They're checking out late. Does that mean we automatically charge them? We get charged for a whole other room night? You're 5 minutes late? No, not usually. depending on the level of where they are and the reward system, if you're gold status or diamond, you're not always guaranteed a late checkout, but you have more priority for a late checkout. What's that? I don't think gold. Diamond might be guaranteed, but I don't think gold is. Gold is when it's available. Elite members with Marriott until 4 p.m. Yeah, absolutely. And so it really just depends on the status. Some hotels will charge a late checkout fee. Why do they charge a late checkout fee? We can't turn that room over fast enough to sell it that next night. We might charge a late checkout fee. We also charge a late checkout fee to discourage late checkouts. Okay? Absolutely, Mr. Brown, you're more than welcome to check out at 4 o'clock. It's going to be an extra $60 for a late checkout. Okay, maybe I don't need to check out at 4 o'clock. Maybe I can, or maybe it's $25 to check out for an extra hour. You know, our checkout time is 11 or 12, and you want to check out at 1 o'clock, but you're not a member of our rewards program. Absolutely, you can check out at 1 o'clock, but it's going to be an additional $25 fee for late checkout fee. We might have to keep our housekeepers later. We might have to, charge. We have to charge for that because if our housekeeper has to stay later because the guest wants to check out later, so that housekeeper can actually clean the room so we can sell it that night, then we definitely want to charge those late checkout fees. It's always okay to ask, can I get a late checkout fee? Anytime I run somewhere for a race, if I'm coming back to the hotel at 11 o'clock and checkout's at noon, I would like a 1 o'clock checkout so that I have time to relax after just doing 13 miles. I can kind of relax and take it easy before I have to rush off to the airport. So it's okay to ask. It's not always guaranteed. We can't always guarantee late checkouts too because if we're sold out for the next day or if we're sold out that night, then we need to make sure that we have enough housekeepers on staff, okay? But so sometimes we can charge for it just to discourage it. So express checkout and self-checkout. So, why? So why do you say that it's hard to explain?
Because express checkout is going to be where you just click the button on the system.
Uh-huh. Express checkout and self-checkout.
Self-checkout is you have to go to the system and you have to do the process and actually recheck it out.
Right. Yeah. So now with technology, we can easily do a self-checkout through our cell phones, through our apps, okay? Express checkout, have you ever been to a hotel where they slide your bill under the door at night? Okay, so in the middle of the night, that night audit person has gone through and they have everyone who's expected to check out the next day, and they slide your bill under the door. Nothing's been charged, but it's a bill, and that way you look at it and you can say, yep, this all looks great. You drop that off at the front desk. You don't have to stop at the front desk. You just drop it off and keep walking, and then they know that that's basically your authorization that everything looks okay on the bill. Okay, so express checkout is something that you can do to kind of expedite that process, especially if somebody's walking up and there's a line of 60 people. I don't know, that's a lot of people. Maybe it's like a 1,000-room hotel, and you've got 60 people that are checking out, especially if it's a business day or a conference, and everyone's trying to check out at the same time to get the shuttle that's going to go to the airport. Get that express checkout, it's a lot faster. Self-checkout too. There's even some hotels that you can check out from the TV. And so you use a remote control and you go to the specific channel. It's all connected to the property management system. And you can actually check out from the TV, from your room, and then just walk out and leave the keys in the room. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
We put aside a so we can have all the, like, so that we hold it longer.
So they check out early, so they come up with
Hmm.
and then have a process with it.
So if their conference isn't quite over yet, they still have meetings in the morning, but they can still come in and check out before breakfast.
But their meeting starts early, but they didn't end till like 1.
Right. Okay. Awesome. That's a good strategy. So that way you don't wait, and then all of a sudden you've got 300 rooms that are checking out at 1 o'clock after a late checkout, and you've got all these rooms that are going to come in later. You need to get those rooms flipped. Absolutely. That's a good strategy. Awesome. So basically have that meeting room set aside for that specific purpose. Excellent. Okay. So we talked about late charges. And unpaid account balances after the departure, those are those late charges. So sometimes it's challenging to collect those late charges, depending on what it is. You also, some credit card companies allow that signature that's on file to count for those late charges. But you still need to contact the guest to tell them. Otherwise, they're going to get a credit card bill, and there's going to be an additional charge of $25. You might give that guest a call and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I just want to let you know that after you checked out, we received your valet charge. We received your receipt for valet, and so we went ahead and charged the account that's on file that additional $25. You're going to see that on that account. That way, it's not a surprise to them. If it's a surprise to them, then they're going to call you. They're going to be very defensive about it, and they're going to want to know why. But if you can be proactive with it and notify them, and that helps alleviate that stress. Okay. The longer things are on collection. So this is now we're on the back of the house side. The account is now in our accounting office. It might be an accounts receivable, well, it definitely is accounts receivable, but it might be the credit card company. It might be a group that had their major meeting, and we're trying to collect payment for their conference that they had. The sooner we set that process in motion to collect all those payments, the better and the easier it's going to become. Okay, and so different types of city accounts within that city ledger. Again, those payment card billings, any direct billings. So we might have a specific time frame where, let's say, we're working with HEB, and we're right across from their corporate office. So we have a direct bill for all of their CEOs or VPs that come in. We're going to send them that bill every month. Okay, we don't want to wait 3 months to send them an entire bill unless it's something we negotiated, but we might send it on a monthly basis just so we can collect that. We might have that net 30 or net 15. Travel agents might have an account with us, and so they collect the payments for the rooms, and then they pay the hotel directly. So if a guest comes in and all their arrangements have been set up by a travel agent, then they're going to come in, and all their charges are going to go to that account that is then billed to the travel agent. Bad check skippers and disputed bills. These are all different types of accounts that we can have that disputed bills. Someone calls and says, I was in an airport one time. This sweet old lady was sitting next to me waiting for the flight, and she was just like, I assure you, young man, that I did not eat that bag of chips. I did not drink that soda in the guest room, right? And I'm just like, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, how often does that happen? Somebody calls and says, I didn't drink that bottle of water. I didn't have that bottle of beer. I didn't drink that, right? And so often that happens. And so we have to figure out how we're going to handle that situation. I mean, the people who abuse that know the system, but then honestly, you have to kind of take those situations one by one. Yes, Jackie.
I keep commenting I used to work at Hamilton and the bars, and I would handle the disputes, and I would also do the postings, even though I was just an environment.
Yeah.
And then I would see the charges for certain ones, and I'd look at them, and I'd be like, this isn't like, an older lady, and they'd be like, you would think somebody, are there items that you wouldn't typically, he was like a businessman and like a associate, so he'd stay there, I'm like, I'm not going to charge those. And then the guy could also have cigar charges, smoke this more.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Guaranteed reservation account. So sometimes if it's a guaranteed reservation that's a prepaid, we're going to have that account in the back of the house. And then once that guest arrives, we're going to apply all those prepayments to the room charges. Okay. And then the late charges and house accounts. So those house accounts are, people that we've negotiated with. We have, they can have charge privileges in the hotel on a regular basis. One of the other accounts that we might have is any kind of thing that we've negotiated with airlines. So airline accounts, we want to make sure we're charging on a regular basis. They guarantee they're going to have a certain number of rooms. They're going to use a certain number of rooms every single day of the year. Okay, that's good benefit. Usually it's at a very discounted rate, just to make sure that they have those rooms available. So if for whatever reason a flight gets canceled and the airline has to put up people in a hotel, they have those agreements with various hotels throughout the city that they can send their guests to, their passengers to. So master folios, typically with the groups, are going to have that master folio. Depending on the situation, if this is a master folio that everything, room, tax, incidentals, anything and everything that's going to be covered, we want to make sure, just like we're checking the credit for our guests, we're also checking the credit for our groups. Okay, that group actually has the credit available to pay this entire amount. So that should be done well in advance. That should not be done the day of arrival. We want to make sure that credit is established well in advance. Okay. We also want to make sure that all of that is done as much as possible so we can expedite the final process. If that person needs to leave, the meeting planner needs to leave, we can expedite that bill, and then we can go over that. So oftentimes, if it's a multiple day meeting, let's say it's a 5-day conference, oftentimes we would actually, the salesperson, whoever that point of contact, might go over the previous day's charges with that person the next day and say, is this okay? This is what we have so far. That way, if it's a 5-day meeting and they've had breakfast, lunch, and dinner events every single day, and they've had incidentals, they have all this entertainment, all that stuff, we want to make sure we're going over that so it's not like at the end of this time we've had a meeting for 1,000 people and now we're trying to negotiate and figure out all of these different charges and whatnot. So that can be something that can be done on a daily basis. Aging our accounts. Okay, so aging our accounts as they're on the city ledger. Okay, we have, obviously when we send it, we have our net 30 or net 15 when we're going to expect payment for those. But we're going to age those accounts as they get older and older. So the sooner we start that process, the easier it is for us to collect that and stay on top of it. So essentially anything that's 30 days or newer is still a current account. Anything that is past 30 days is overdue, and 90 days is considered delinquent. So we need to be a little bit more aggressive with our collection process if something is a delinquent account. Okay. This is all part of the process of maintaining our accounting for the hotel. This also goes into the history of that account. So let's say we have a group that's in-house and they are consistently late. We've hosted them 3 times, and each time, the second time they were late, the third time they were delinquent, and the fourth time they call us to say, hey, we want to do our meeting at your hotel. We might be a little bit more cautious, or we might require a deposit up front. We might change our process with that particular group based on their history. Okay. Same thing with our vendors. If we're not receiving payment from our vendors on a timely manner, then we also want to address that as well. So this is going over the history files. We've already talked about this a little bit already. The different trends of the guests. Are they charging to their rooms? Are they charging with their own credit cards? Are they paying cash? Are they using the fitness center? Are they using the spa? Are they using the golf course? All those different things kind of help us identify the trends. Let's see, what else? We can use their zip codes to identify where the majority of our guests are coming from geographically. So if a lot of our guests are coming from Houston, but not many guests are coming from Austin or Dallas, well, then we can increase our marketing in those areas so that we can attract more guests from the Houston, or we can even take it a little bit broader. If we have more domestic people versus international travelers, we might, or if we already have a lot of international travelers, we don't have as many domestic, we might change our marketing and our advertising techniques to attract a different market, right? Of course, we want to make sure that everybody is part of our frequent guest programs. So Hilton Honors, Marriott Bonvoy, Omni has one, Drury has one, Hyatt has one, IHG has one. So pretty much every major hotel chain has a rewards program. There's even Phoenix Hotel Group is a management company. They manage a couple different hotels here in San Antonio. They even have their own personal one for Phoenix Hotel Group. So if I were to stay at the DoubleTree out in Bernie that just opened, like I would get points for my Hilton Honors, but I'd also get points for their specific rewards program. They also operate the Embassy Suites at Brook City Base, and there's one more that I can't think of off the top of my head. But they even have their own individual rewards programs, which to me seems convoluted, but whatever. If it works, it works. It attracts people to those hotels, okay? Those comment cards are so important. Not necessarily just comment cards, but the surveys as well are so important because it gives us our feedback of where we need to improve, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. We might even ask if we want to make reservations for the guests as they're departing. You know, if it's somebody who is a regular guest and they come every 2 weeks or they come, once a month, and we know that next month is Fiesta, we might say, hey, Mr. Smith, I see that, you come back every month around this time, the last 3 months, would you like me to make a reservation for the next time? And let me just check on the availability, because it is our Fiesta weekend, and that's going to be very busy. We usually sell out. So you might offer to make those reservations at that point. So with data privacy, it's the responsibility of us as the hotel to protect the privacy of our guests when it comes to the payment cards and all of their information, okay? So the people that are at the front desk need to be reliable. They need to be trustworthy people that are not going to be stealing credit card numbers and credit card information from our guests, okay? This is something you're going to go into a little bit more detail in the legal issues course, so we're not going to cover it a whole lot in this class. But in the legal issues course, you'll talk about how this is part of a lot of different lawsuits and a lot of different litigation and who really is responsible. Ultimately, it's the hotel that's responsible. It's not the software company that's responsible. It's the hotel that's responsible. The Alamo Area Hospitality Association, I remember when I was on the board when they had to change from the swipe cards for PayPal to an actual chip inserted. And there was a mandatory change to the chip inserted processing for PayPal. AHA could still use the swipe card, but the regulations had changed that if there was a breach in security and all that information was compromised, then AHA would be held responsible, not PayPal, if they were still using the swipe. But if they were using the chip, then at that point the liability would be different, okay? And so, because it was more secure using the chip readers. And so every year, the company, the hotel, has to go be updated through their security process. They have to be basically recertified to make sure that everything is up to speed and everything is good to go. They have to update they have to make sure that they're performing up to the standards that are required. I don't have a lot of experience in the payment card side of it and the legal side of it, but I just know that there are certain regulations, there's certain standards that have to be met, and if you don't meet those, then you won't be recertified and you cannot accept credit card payments. Yes, ma'am.
Then, like, when they were going through the transition out the chip from traditionally we had the death certificate of the card and we could do a swipe on the counter. Now with the chip being front, it gets less collaboration on the DSAs for them to be card. We're never touching the card anymore. Now people just if they it shows them the transaction in front, so they can saying, okay, I agree, that way it's less easier.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Very good. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?